There's one thing that I don't understand about American culture that we're going to discuss in the video today. After quite a bit of traveling the last few years, I was surprised to learn that in most countries, it's actually normal to live with your parents past the age of 18, usually until one of two things happens. One, you get a nice job somewhere else and you got to move away for work, or number two, you get settled down with a partner and get married. However, in the United States, if you're 19 and you're still living with your parents, you're often labeled a loser by society. What is he doing with his life? He's got no job, no education, no girlfriend. He must be broke. And good luck trying to date when telling chicks that you live with your parents. So I lived with my parents for about 4 years in my 20s, and doing so allowed me to focus on my career, limit distractions, be healthier, and maybe most importantly, save a crap ton of money and invest at a young age. I credit living at home to some of my financial successes. If you're watching this and you're lucky enough to have the opportunity to live with your parents, especially in your early 20s, it's something that you should strongly consider to gain a financial advantage. Going against the grain can help you gain an edge here despite what society thinks, so let's dive in. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments if you're an American, or especially if you're not an American, because I'm really interested in your take on this as well. So why did I live in my parents' basement? Let me share the experiences of the times I lived with my parents in my 20s, which is about half of my 20s so far. I'm 28, and a lot of it wasn't really planned, but I was lucky enough that it kind of worked out in my favor. So I went to university away from home, and I graduated in 2018, and then from then until 2020, I lived with a bunch of college roommates, so all working a full-time job, and I was super cheap. Like I didn't even have my own room literally until 2019. I shared a room with another idiot, even though I had a full-time engineering job. And then let's fast forward to February of 2020. I'm a software developer working in a corporate office, and I didn't have the ability to work remote yet. But then all of a sudden, the pandemic struck the world. You know how fast it happened. Like the situation escalated so fast. I mean, early in the year, people were like, "Oh, it's nothing to worry about," and by March, people were saying it was the most deadly thing ever. So by the end of March, most people were instructed to work from home. And I thought that being in a city with lots of students might not be a good idea moving forward, so I decided to move back in with my parents in the midst of the uncertainty. Thankfully, I had my own place right in the basement of their house near Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but this would be life-changing for me financially. I'd say rent has been my biggest expense for my entire life, and probably for most people listening to this as well. And then this was until I moved back in with my parents, where I'm thankful that the only rent I had to pay was just doing chores around the house, whatever my Midwest dad told me to do. My biggest expenses were then food, insurance, miscellaneous bills, and a lot of these got reduced too because my family and I all combined to buy food and stuff like that. So I was very fortunate also that I kept my engineering job during the pandemic because this gave me cash to continually invest during a 30% correction in the stock market. I was able to save, invest about 80%, 80, 90% of my income during this time. And I used this opportunity to max out investment accounts while still contributing to an individual taxable account. As the market quickly bounced back with a V-shaped recovery, my net worth really took off during this time. And because my cost of living was so low, the market essentially went on an upward trajectory all the way up until when I moved out in November of 2021. And this really skyrocketed my net worth just given the large gains in the stock markets and my ability to invest more since I was living at home. So I lived there, I lived cheap, I kept investing, and this took my finances to the next level while I kept working remote. And so living home during this period was just crucial to me to allow me to invest more. Then after about 2 years of doing that, and then when I switched jobs and broke up with my girlfriend at the time, I was a single male, wanted to move to the city where I worked. So I moved to Milwaukee for about a year and a half, then found myself in another relationship, except this girl, however, was not from America. And I told her that, I kind of wanted to pursue my dreams and eventually, build cushion to quit my job. So I was like, I might live with my parents. What do you think of that? And I was kind of expecting a bad answer in my head. But she said, absolutely go for it. She lived with her family, which is a Latin American household, almost her entire 20s, thought it was a great idea. And I was like, American woman would never say such a thing. During each stint of living at home, my net worth went up a lot because my expenses were so slim. This is definitely the best benefit of living at home is now I have a cushion to fall back on if needed and investments that yield passive income to me. There were several non-financial benefits to living back home and away from cities as well. Although living in the city is fun and there's lots of action there, there's definitely more distractions. I was able to focus more, which helped me get promoted in my career to a senior software engineer at the company I was working for. It was also a little easier to stay consistent with workouts and eating healthy, and I was going out less. So I probably missed out on some fun times, but not much was going on during the COVID time period, especially anyway, so I just didn't feel much FOMO. And then later in my 20s when I moved back in, I was kind of over the going out scene to begin with. So living at home gave me so much in my personal and financial life, despite people kind of calling me a loser from time to time for living at home. So this got me thinking, why don't more people do this in America? Independence and self-sufficiency and self-reliance seems to be valued a lot in America. It's kind of a flex to have your own place, your own car, to be doing well financially. And if you don't have these things, inevitably you'll have a harder time with a lot of things, especially dating. I mean, America is, very successful and has a lot of opportunities, don't get me wrong. But man, I just really don't understand this part of our culture. I think many young people could get stability and a cushion by living at home, or at least living with a bunch of roommates. In many countries across Europe and Latin America, multi-generational households are very common. So you're living in a house with your parents, maybe grandma and grandpa. Everyone pools their money together, everyone saves money, and you have more of a tight-knit family and a great support network. Then you leave if you have a great opportunity or you find a partner. Americans, on the contrary, pay a lot of money to just be more alone and lonely. It literally doesn't make sense. I don't think I know very many Americans that honestly live in a multi-generational household. It's not the standard here. But the tides are changing recently. In America, more people are living at home because there's rising housing costs, student loan debt, and a lot of economic challenges and challenges within the job market. So I found some interesting stats. So compared to America, where 33% of young adults live with their parents, and it's apparently increasing now in the past few years due to the factors I just talked about. But you look at Japan, 50% of adults live in their late 20s live at home. In India, it's like 80%. Italy and Spain, 60% of young adults. And in Latin America, I'm sure it's much higher as well. So it's weird to see that we have this culture of self-reliance. And I would say that almost the American ego is contributing to this. Like, you don't need to do it. And in fact, you might be in a much better position to buy a house and find someone once you get some stability. Let me be clear too, I'm not recommending everybody do this. There are several drawbacks to living with your parents, especially in your parents' basement as well. For example, your parents might get a little bit too involved in your life, more than you'd like. Like, you can't leave the house a lot of the time without them asking what you're doing or knowing what you're up to. Let's also talk about the elephant in the room. Good luck dating when you have to tell people you live with your parents in your 20s. That one usually doesn't work out very well, and honestly played a role in me moving back out to the city when I became single again. Because, yet again, for some reason in America, it is just not seen as attractive, not really accepted as much when you live at home. There's still a stigma, and it's impossible to deny that. Living at home also caused me to be less social. Like, when living in cities, it's so easy to get together with people and do things, and there's a lot going on around you, a lot of events. And now when you live kind of further from it, there's many reasons to not go out. Like, it's a long drive, you might need to Uber, you might need to sleep on couches, and although this saves some money, I do feel like I missed out on some experiences that I could have had living in the city. So even though it was fairly normal to live at home during the pandemic, there were definitely times when you felt like a loser for telling people you lived at home. Like, even if it's more accepted now, there's still that stigma of, oh yeah, you live at home, right? So if you do decide to live at home, you need a plan. It should really be a temporary thing. Like, you need a good reason to do it and have a plan to get out of that situation. Pretend that you're on a date and she asks you, why are you living at home? You don't want to fumble. You need a good answer. You got to say something like, I'm doing this to save money and invest in my future. Or, I'm doing this to eliminate distractions so I can build my business or build my YouTube. Got to have a plan to move out, but it can be used as a tool to save money and give you some cushion and give you more stability later. So I went against the grain, and it made me richer. And this came pretty much only at the cost of maybe a couple experiences and being labeled as a loser in the public eye. While everyone else was spending $2,000 a month to rent, to live by themselves, I was investing that in the stock market every month. And now after, 4 years of doing that, I have assets that pay me consistently. So you live with your parents. Who gives a crap? I'm better off now. Ignore the stupid cultural norms if it can benefit you. If you have a chance to do it, it's something to consider for a short period of time. After many years, I'm proud to say I've moved out of my parents' basement, and maybe for good this time. It was a long time coming, and I can definitely say I do not regret the decision to live there one little bit, because it helped me advance my career, enabled me to get a head start on investing at a young age, and gave me more freedom with financial decisions that I'm making now. But for example, quitting my job. I might not have done that if I didn't save the level of money that I saved. I acknowledge this might not work for everyone, and everyone has different family situations, and I'm very lucky that I got along with them well and had them supporting me in many ways. So I definitely am not taking that for granted. The bottom line is that the decisions you make in your early 20s have compounding effects for the rest of your life. My approach was to save and invest as much as I could, regardless of the circumstances I was in. Living frugally during the pandemic helped me realize how much tiny habits can help you increase your savings and investing rate. So definitely consider doing it. Let me know if you did something similar to me. If you're from another country, I'd love to hear kind of the cultural norms in your world. So let me know your thoughts, and thanks for watching, everyone.